Welcome back to the Armchair Trader podcast. And today we are doing our first in-person podcast in what has been a very long time. We're here in central London, and today we're with Michael Saxon, who is the CEO of TAAT Global, on his first trip to Europe as the CEO of TAAT Global. So it's very, very good to have you here today, Michael.
Thank you, Stuart.
What is TAAT, for those who are not familiar with it, for those who haven't come across the company before? I know we've done some previous podcasts on TAAT, but can you give us a quick rundown on TAAT, the company, and its product?
TAAT is a revolutionary smoking product. Doesn't use tobacco and doesn't contain nicotine, but provides the smoker an experience that is exactly like the normal traditional tobacco cigarette.
So TAAT has actually only been sold in the US for a relatively short period of time. You have been targeting a number of states and also doing some distribution overseas, but it's fair to say that it's still early days for TAAT.
That's correct. We're now on the third generation of our product. The original product was launched a couple years ago. One of our base ingredients is hemp. And that product, while it was really good, was a product that was likely to stay niche, as it really only attracted those who were looking for a hemp-based product. But that was not our goal. Our goal was to provide an alternative to tobacco consumer, so that they can make the switch. We're now on version 3. We feel very confident about the product as it sits today. And just recently, we published some early results that we've got here from our home market in Las Vegas, where we've seen triple-digit growth rates in our Las Vegas home market in one of our partner anchor accounts.
So in essence, TAAT smells like and tastes like tobacco. It looks like a tobacco cigarette, but at the same time, it's not subject to tax like tobacco is.
Every jurisdiction is a little bit different, but if we speak from a U.S. perspective, yes, it falls into a regulatory. We're not regulated by the FDA. We're not regulated in terms of normal taxation. So that gives us the flexibility to bring this product to market at a price point that is attractive to the consumers, but it's also extremely attractive to the trade, which we hope will help us scale across the U.S.
You've recently become CEO. Previously, you were on the advisory board. You were appointed in June, but you're not a stranger to the tobacco industry. Can you give us a little bit more background on yourself?
So I spent the large part of my career with both Philip Morris International and Altria Group. I started my career in 1995 in sales at Philip Morris USA, kind of rose the traditional sales ranks, and moved to PMI in 2002. Spent time in Europe, 5 years then in Asia, in 2 different markets in Asia, and came back to Europe. I stayed with PMI when Altria and PMI split in 2 different companies. And I came back to Altria in 2012 to lead their corporate venture platform and later lead one of their largest business units, a $3.5 billion P&L.
So it's fair to say that you are fairly familiar with innovation within the tobacco industry.
Very much. I think one of the reasons I stayed in the industry as long as I did is I got an early peek behind the curtain to what PMI markets today called IQOS. And I was actually part of a team that launched the very first version of that product called Accord in the late 90s in the US. And it was that peek behind the curtain that inspired me to stay in the industry as long as I did. And it's partially the reason I joined TAAT today.
Was the attraction of TAAT to you the innovative nature of the project? Was that something that you liked, the fact that it's such a game changer?
Absolutely. One of my excitements, as well as a couple of our anchor investors, is if you look at what the adult tobacco or adult cigarette smoker has been provided today in terms of alternatives, it's a real change in behavior. It's either a new device or a new form factor that they have to use. And no one's looked at it from, hey, let's redesign the cigarette and provide an experience that is less of a hurdle in terms of migrating the consumer to something that is potentially less harmful.
So TAAT itself, you've been talking a little bit about the material. This is a proprietary material that you use in the cigarette. It's like the secret sauce. Is that something that you're able to protect? Can you tell us a little bit more about how you can defend the IP?
Absolutely. We use the phrase "it's beyond tobacco" because it's not tobacco. It does use plant-based material, and it's formulated in a way that really provides the adult smoker an experience that is as close as we can get to without using tobacco itself.
TAAT is a solution for people who are already smokers, of which there are many, existing smokers who are trying to give up. Maybe they're trying things like nicotine patches or vaping, and that's not working for them. So, could this actually be a third way for them?
We believe so, and we believe some of the early science we've invested in points that we're heading in the right direction. Um, there's more work to be done, but we're excited about the track that we're on, and the fact that our product doesn't contain nicotine, but it does have other things like CBD. We think there's potential there that could be it could really help adult smokers switch from a traditional tobacco cigarette.
I appreciate you're new to the role, but obviously existing investors in TAT will be very interested to know about the new direction under your aegis. Can you give us a little bit more flavor of what that's going to look like?
Yeah, so we've well, I think there's a couple things. Is within probably a week on the job, we immediately said, I was walking through the Las Vegas market and I was like, why am I not finding TAT in every store here? And came to learn really quickly that we hadn't launched it at a full scale approach in Vegas. And I said, well, geez, this is our home market. We're here and we've got a lot to learn. So we really put a concentrated effort on the Las Vegas market. And just like Europe, the US is a really large market, right? It's many markets tied up within one. So what we try to really do is localize our approach to really go deep from a sales point of view, make sure we had broad distribution across the Las Vegas market. And we coupled that with a full scale marketing approach. From everything, we're able to use radio, which traditionally is a vehicle we haven't been able to do, as well as a lot of consumer engagement and direct one-to-one type communication. So we've concentrated that effort all into Las Vegas. And the early signs are promising, like we published last week in our anchor partner account, Speeding Mark. And what we've learned from that is that we can go from awareness of the product, we can get the consumers to try it, and now we're seeing consumers buy it on a regular basis. And that's what you want to replicate. And now that we've done that in Las Vegas, we think we can actually take down a rinse and repeat approach across the US. In addition to that, over the last couple months, we've hired a company called IRI. IRI would be very similar to a company like Nielsen here in the US. And they helped us really look at the US and drive down state by state and help us provide us a roadmap of where we can focus. And one of those states that's going to become a priority for us, we've already talked a little bit about from a fresh release point of view, and that's the state of Texas. We launched a terrific partner account here in the last couple of weeks called Buc-ee's, which is an iconic convenience store chain in the state of Texas. And we look to build off that and really take the things we've learned in Las Vegas and replicate those in a state by state approach across the US.
So when TAT started out, you targeted a number of the larger domestic US tobacco markets like Ohio, Pennsylvania, I believe the Carolinas. I know now you're also looking at or actually beginning to distribute in Texas. Can you give us a little bit more of an idea on why Texas? What was the big attraction there?
Yeah, I think it really does come to finding that anchor account in a state. Similar to Europe, US, you still have a large mom and pop convenience store population, but it's really getting in a couple of those really large chain accounts that makes a difference. And that will help that mom and pop universe follow really quickly. But getting an account like a Buc-ee's in a state really provides that launch platform to go into the state in a big way. And if you identify the right accounts in a state, and that's from a large chain account point of view, like in every industry, there are leaders and there's followers. And if we can identify those right partner anchor accounts that are leaders, the other accounts will follow as well.
TAT has generated a lot of interest from investors in Europe and the UK. But obviously, some of these people are also active smokers looking to give up, and we get asked a lot about the company's plans as they stand for further distribution in the UK and Europe. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So actually, it was last night. I had meetings with our partners here in the UK. We're pretty excited. They've now ordered 4 different delivery or shipments of the product. Um, and they're extremely bullish on the product as well. Like every new CPG product expanding international, there's teething problems and supply chain things, especially in the world today that we've had to kind of wrestle with. And especially, in our product, we kind of consider ourselves a category creator, right? In this beyond tobacco kind of concept. So there's little teething problems we've had, but I'm really excited to see us grow across the UK in 2023. And I'm going to be in Dortmund, Germany at Intertobac conference and have several meetings with other distributors across Europe. And hopefully in time, the story that we're learning here in the UK will spread across Europe. But for now, UK is really kind of, I consider our home base here in Europe. And we've got some really early promising signs from the distribution we've had in London. And this is now our second shipment of version 3. And hopefully the supply chain issues that we've kind of worked on will resolve themselves here in the next coming months, and we'll have a regular supply. And it can hopefully start to see the product expand across beyond the borders of the London market.
You mentioned version 3 of TAAT's Beyond Tobacco. Can you tell us a little bit more about the changes that you're implementing around that?
Yeah. So I think as I mentioned earlier, right, the early versions of the product were really I would call it hemp forward, right? It wasn't something the average mainstream adult cigarette smoker would find enjoyable. It would have been a real change in their experience. And through it, I think 4 or 5 different iterations now, and we called them 1.1, 2, 2.1, up to 3. Now is what we call it. If you were to open up, break open a normal tobacco cigarette and then break open a tat, you'd have a really hard time telling the difference between the 2 products. Our base proprietary material we call Beyond Tobacco really does resemble the experience that adult tobacco gets when they smoke a normal tobacco cigarette.
So Beyond, I mean, I've tried Beyond Meat recently, and I have to say I was really impressed at just how close to real meat it is. It's virtually indistinguishable, in my opinion. Is that basically what you're aiming for here with Beyond Tobacco? That for a smoker it would be virtually indistinguishable from normal tobacco?
That's the same, and we get that comparison a lot, because that's an analogy that people easily understand. And when I was out at our first consumer engagement event in Las Vegas and had a chance to interact with consumers myself, um, they draw that same comparison, right? And it's there really is a wow factor when people pick it up and try it and realize that it's not tobacco, but how closely it resembles their traditional tobacco cigarette experience.
We started covering TAT during the pandemic. Everything was locked down. You've mentioned that you're going to a trade show in Germany. How much of an impact was the pandemic itself on the growth of TAT, and how important is it now that the pandemic is receding and that your team is actually able to get out to these distributor trade shows, and also, has it really impeded the way you can distribute the product?
I think it absolutely will change things. And I look at things a little differently. Yes, I think come back and answer your question. The pandemic hurt a lot of people in the consumer product good space, especially if you were a new product. Because the supply chain issue started hitting really fast, many retailers locked down their planograms and their assortment until they got some breathing room themselves. So I'm sure there was an impact on that, but I actually look at that as a little bit of a blessing in disguise. At that time, we had version 1 or 2 of the product, and we know today that that wasn't the right product to scale. Uh, and we've learned that reintroducing version 3 in a market that had 1 and 2 is difficult. We've learned that in what we kind of call another home market of ours, where our ADCO business is in Ohio, that reintroducing version 3 when consumers had tried version 1 and 2 is an uphill battle. It's brands are just like people, right? And you form a bad first impression. It's kind of hard to get that second bite of the apple sometimes. The good news is the footprint we have in Ohio is relatively small. So when it comes time to relaunching it across Ohio and other major markets like Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, we're not going to face that battle. Um, But yeah, gaining the access, I think we're really excited about the upcoming National Association of Convenience Stores and the work we're going to be doing there, meeting with top to top C-store leaders and the C-store leaders we've spoke to so far, because we are a real win-win scenario for them. We improve the profitability of their tobacco category. In the United States, a wholesale retailer might be making mid-single digits, low single digits, even in many cases on their tobacco category. A retailer might be making low double digits in terms of gross margins, and we can improve the profitability of their category quite substantially once they hear our story and they understand the economics benefits to them. We'll be able to scale really quickly.
And finally, I wanted to just ask you a little bit more about your views on data-driven sales, data-driven processes in this market. How much are you going to be using that as you go forward with TAAT?
A little bit is from my background in history. Coming from big tobacco, we had access to just reams of data that influenced decisions. Not that eliminates some gut intuition, but definitely data helps drive and set the priorities. For us as a small company, still today, we needed the data so that we could prioritize and really help identify the areas we thought we could win fast. And that was really most important. And because when you're launching a category creator product, you can't just throw it on the shelf, hope it sticks, right? It really does take that combination, concerted effort between sales and marketing in the market, like what we're seeing in Las Vegas, to really, one, get people just aware of the product, get the courage to try it, and then hopefully adopt it over time. And if you don't concentrate those marketing and sales efforts geographically, and you just face an uphill battle. So we've used data to really influence where we go, which accounts we're going to prioritize. And then as we go forward, we'll bring new aspects to data as it influences future R&D going forward.
Thanks very much indeed for coming on the podcast today, Michael. I really appreciate it.
You bet. We welcome the feedback from your subscriber base and really appreciate the opportunity to be here in the UK at a sad but really exciting time. So my condolences to those in the country. But at the same time, it was fun to be over here and see the celebration that you guys are experiencing, both for Queen Elizabeth and your new King Charles. Look forward to talking to you again soon.
You've been listening to the Armchair Trader podcast. Make sure you visit our website, www.thearmchairtrader.com, for your daily dose of financial markets news and sign up to our free newsletter there.